to the Nerdy Grail, and welcome to a video that I wasn't anticipating on making, but I thought because it's such a big month full of movies with big blockbusters like Jurassic World Rebirth, the new Superman movie, Fantastic Four First Steps coming out this month, I thought now's a better time than any than to do a list of the top 10 best and worst movies of 2025 that I've seen so far, mind, because obviously we're only halfway through the year and there's plenty more movies to come. Now, a few little ground rules and just a few things to explain to you. Firstly, this is a top 10 list, but I'm not doing 10 best movies and 10 worst movies, because firstly, I've not seen that many movies, but also I'm going to just break it down into my top 5 best and top 5 worst. So 10 movies in total, but 5 for the best section and 5 for the worst section. It's also worth keeping in mind that just because a movie's in the best section doesn't mean it was a perfect movie. There is a couple of movies in the best section that obviously do have some negatives, and I will discuss those. And same for the worst section, just because they're in the worst section doesn't mean that they were god-awful movies. They do have some positives to them, and they might not necessarily be in the worst section because I thought they were awful, but because they might have been something that I was really looking forward to, but it just disappointed me, and so I've had to put it in the worst list. Also, keep in mind, I've not seen every movie and every big movie that's come out this year. So if you're thinking, well, why isn't that in the best section or why isn't that in the worst section? It's because I've probably not seen it this year. And also, keep in mind, I'm not going to be talking for ages on each of these movies either, because every movie that appears on this list, I have actually done a review on my channel. So if you want to hear my full thoughts on these movies, please feel free to look back over my channel and check my individual reviews of all of these movies. And in terms of release schedule for these movies, I'm going based on the UK, because there is one movie on this list that I know technically came out at the tail end of last year in 2024 in some countries, but in the UK it came out in 2025, so I'm counting it on this list. So now, with all the housekeeping out of the way, just keep in mind this is my own personal opinion. Your list will probably more than likely differ to mine, and that is okay. But can we keep all comments, if we're going to comment, civil, please? But without any further ado, I will start this video by jumping in to my top 5 best movies that I've seen of 2025 so far. So in this section, we're going to be talking about my 5 best movies of 2025 so far. And 2025 has had some phenomenal movies. And just because there's only 10 movies on this list doesn't mean that's the only 10 that I saw this year. There's still plenty more that I was also considering for both the best and the worst list. But for the best, the first film I'm going to talk about briefly is none other than the latest entry in the MCU, Thunderbolts. Now, or as it should be known now, if you haven't seen it, spoilers, The New Avengers. Now, I really enjoyed it, and I think it's merely because the group of characters that they got together, I know everyone was a bit cautious and unsure whether that group would work, and the rota kept changing, the little roster of characters, but I think they all gelled really, really well. You know, I really loved it. Yelena was brilliant. Red Guardian was brilliant. John Walker's US agent was great. I loved Ghost. I thought Ghost was done really, really well. Really annoyed, though, what they did with Taskmaster. That is a big negative for me, because obviously Taskmaster was in all the advertisements, the trailers, and was in literally like 2 minutes of the movie, so it was absolutely pointless. Sentry as the core villain, I thought was really, really good. And yeah, I thought the pacing of the film was really good. It had a good element, good mix of both light and dark. It seemed really intense, and also the post-credits scene at the end, teasing the Fantastic Four, I thought was also really, really good. So I quite liked the Thunderbolts. I know it's had some mixed reviews. I know some people really liked it and some people really hated it. But for me personally, I thought the Thunderbolts was actually alright. You know, these whole recent phases of the MCU have been a bit of a mixed bag. But I can safely say that for me, Thunderbolts was at least enjoyable, and definitely for me had to make it into the top 5 spot. Okay, so moving on from the Thunderbolts, we are going to now talk about Ballerina. Now, I'm a massive fan of the John Wick franchise. Anyone who knows me knows I love John Wick. All 4 movies I think are solid. I think it's one of the few franchises where every single film is an absolute banger and they make very little mistakes. And Keanu Reeves does a fantastic job. But Ballerina focuses on a different character entirely, but still set within the John Wick universe. But that doesn't mean that Keanu Reeves doesn't decide to invade this movie as well. So this movie takes place between the events of John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum and John Wick Chapter 4. And it follows a character called Eve Macaro, who's this assassin character, ballerina character, who's basically trying to get revenge on, due to some family affairs that had happened. And it is done really, really well. There's lots of really good action, really good set pieces, good choreography, good locations and change in settings. Really slips in well to the John Wick universe. You get to see some old familiar faces come back who do really well. I really like it. And I love the fight between Eve and also John, because yes, Keanu Reeves does actually play a decent role in this movie. He's actually sent out towards the end to try and stop her from achieving her goal. But they end up working together. Because, come on, you can't have John Wick being the true antagonist now, can you? But I really, really enjoyed it. It's another solid entry into the John Wick franchise. And like I said, if you want to hear my full review, I have got a full review on every one of these movies. But I think Ballerina is definitely a movie you should check out. You could even check it out as your first John Wick movie. I think you wouldn't be too confused. I think they do a good job at introducing characters and themes within the universe fairly well. But I really, really enjoyed it. So yeah, and hopefully they'll do some more spin-off movies, and we'll maybe do a Ballerina 2 in the future, because I think that would be really, really good. Okay, moving on from Ballerina. This one might shock some people, because I know a few people actually weren't a huge fan of this movie. But I actually really liked it, and I think it's because of the concept and the visuals of this movie. I'm talking about Wolfman. Now, this was quite an early release of the year, and it was on like one of my anticipated lists, because a lot of these movies were on my top 10 most anticipated list of the year. I really enjoyed Wolfman. I thought it was really, really good. I thought it did a really good job at making you like the family that are going to be impacted in the movie, especially the father character, who has a perfect relationship. Well, not a perfect relationship, but has a really good relationship with his daughter in particular. And obviously he's going through some troubles with his wife, but they do have a good bond and a good bit of chemistry. So it makes you feel for them. And if you can feel something for those characters, then you know you're going to be in for a ride of a movie. And obviously this whole movie is about the dad basically transforming into a monster, transforming into a wolfman, which by the end he does become that, and unfortunately does not get turned back. So it is very sad and really hits you in the feels. But something that I really liked about this movie was the way in which they did the transformation. I will admit, I think they did do it a bit too quick. I think you could have had a bit longer of the transformation process. It was, as soon as he starts transforming, he sort of practically lost all of his humanity straight away. I think they could have gone a bit deeper on that, if I'm perfectly honest. But they do it in a really good way, where like his visuals change, he can't understand his family, and it's really scary for them, and I really like it. And it's very dark, the movie as well, set in the middle of nowhere, and everything comes full circle in the movie as well. Really like it. Pacing, like I said, is a little bit of a mess at times, which is why I said that the transformation could have been dragged out a little bit longer. But I thought overall it was an enjoyable horror experience for me. And like I said, I know some people weren't huge on it, but for me, I quite liked Wolfman. The fourth movie I want to talk about on this list, and this is the one where I did say technically came out at the end of last year, but in the UK came out on New Year's Day this year, so technically it's a 2025 movie for the UK. And I'm of course talking about a film that's actually behind me, Nosferatu. Now, I was really unsure about whether I was going to like this movie, because I'm not really huge on vampires. The only real vampire films, per se, that I've enjoyed is The Lost Boys and Abigail, which came out last year. I really enjoyed. In fact, if you saw my movies ranking all the movies 2024, Abigail came quite high. So I was unsure with Nosferatu, but the cast drew me in, and the cast did fantastic. Nicholas Hoult, Willem Dafoe, Bill Skarsgård, all fantastic. The atmosphere was terrifying and brilliant. It was a very long film, but I never felt like it was too long. I never was checking my watch. It was done phenomenally, brilliant. Keeps you on the edge of your seat from start to finish. it is a masterpiece, if I'm perfectly honest. I really, really enjoyed it. I know, again, this film sort of got a couple of mixed reviews, so I wouldn't be surprised if some people weren't as much of a fan of it. But for me personally, I quite like Nosferatu, and I would recommend going to watch it as well. So I really liked it. And the last film that I'm going to talk about on the good side is, and this is a shocker, and this will shock some people, it might even shock my fiance, is Until Dawn. Yes, Until Dawn. Now, as an adaptation of actual Until Dawn based on the video game, I don't think this is a very good movie. As a movie itself, I think is very entertaining. And me and my fiance say the same thing. We thought it was going to be a fantastic movie, but would be basically nothing to do with Until Dawn, and that's exactly what this is. There's Easter eggs, don't get me wrong, and they've got a couple of characters here and there, but overall, yeah, it's not Until Dawn. But I love time loop movies and, you know, Groundhog Day style movies, and that's exactly what this is. You got a group of friends who are on the hunt for someone, they go into a house, they get trapped there, and each night there's a new thing that's trying to kill them, and they got to try and escape the loop. And it's done in very creative ways. They do skip some of the more intense ones, which they show in the trailer, which is unfortunate. So that's a bit of a negative for me. But the ones they do show you are still creepy, still intense, and they really use the location to their advantage. So I really, really like that. And it does end in a very satisfying way. But if you know the game Until Dawn, that can be just like one of many, many endings. But yeah, I quite liked Until Dawn. Not in terms of its, you know, paying homage to the game, but just as a film in general, and because it's a film concept of which I really, really like. So those are my top 5 best movies for 2025 so far. Like I said, there's plenty of other films I've seen that I was considering, and I'm sure there'll be other films later down the line in the year that I will really like as well. But now I'm going to pause the video, and then we are going to discuss my top 5 worst movies of 2025 so far. So, like the best list, I'm now going to do my top 5 worst movies that I've seen so far in 2025. And like I said, keep in mind, if you like some of these, this is just my personal opinion. And I'm not saying that these are god-awful movies. Like I said, some of these movies on this list are here just because I was disappointed, more so than I think they are bad. And there's definitely positives to these movies. But for me, if I was to weigh up which movies I'd rather go see again, or that I'll be racing to get on physical media, these ones will be taking a little bit more of a back burner. Right, okay, so the first movie I'm going to talk about is not really a proper mainstream movie. However, I have been delving into more horror movies, and in particular I've been looking at like Puniverse movies and, you know, movies of that sort of caliber. And so the first movie I'm going to be talking about is Popeye's Revenge, and I have done a review on it on the channel, so I'm not going to delve too deep. But this movie, oh my goodness, it was just absolutely horrendous. And I believe this movie was made by the same people who were doing the Puniverse movies, and I don't know what they were doing. They clearly weren't putting enough time and effort into this one, or they were just delving into the Puniverse ones more and putting more of their effort into those, because those movies are actually improving quite a lot. But Popeye's Revenge was awful. It suffered with terrible pacing. It's unfortunate to say, but the acting was absolutely horrendous. You know, the camera work, it was hard to watch. Stuff didn't make sense, and it was basically a porno. I said that in my review. It was basically a porno, and it was just really uncomfortable to watch, and it ends so abruptly that I haven't gone back to rewatch it. I feel like if I was going to rewatch it, it'd have to be for like a challenge or something. But it is not a good movie. Would I recommend it? No, but maybe you could get your friends together and you could do like a game based on it or a challenge on it, just to give you some entertainment for it. If I was to give it one positive, I will say that it is painfully short. And also I will say that obviously there's some scenes that are so bad it's funny. But apart from that, I can't recommend Popeye's Revenge, if I'm honest, and I'd stay away from it personally. It's not the best movie at all. The next movie I'm going to talk about is one that people are probably not surprised is on this side of the list. It's a movie that's behind me as well. I'm of course talking about Disney's Snow White, one of the more recent live-action Disney remakes. And yeah, this is on here for numerous reasons. Obviously all the controversy that was out before it, with everything that was going on with the lead actress. You know, that didn't really help the situation. Obviously, everything that went on with the dwarves, everything that went on, just everything behind the scenes didn't help. Yeah, it was a bit of a shambles, to be honest. The pacing of the movie was off. Visually, I will say that the movie is good. Like I said, there is some positives. I will say visually, in some areas, because I know some people will pick me up on that, some areas like the location shots and like panning shots, like the kingdom and the forest and stuff, look great, and the transformation of Gal Gadot's evil queen into the old witch is really, really cool. I liked that. But visually, like the Seven Dwarves, they didn't look as terrible as the trailers, but they also did look uncomfortable to watch. It wasn't done very, very well. They made some questionable changes to some of the decisions with the dwarves as well. You know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I'm just not a fan of this movie at all. It's not done very, very well. The pacing is very, very off, especially towards the end. It feels like very just like, quick, we've got to do this, we've got to do this, we've got to do this. And it is very checkbox as well. I'm not a fan of Disney Snow White. I've done a full review on it. It was one of the first and only films to this day that I've been in the cinema and people have actually walked out of the cinema. People actually walked out of the cinema in different sections. One was about 45 minutes in, and then one was about an hour and a half in. But yeah, it wasn't a very good movie. I do obviously own it physically. That's more as just a completionist sake for me. It's not the best, I'm sorry. And the acting is not the best either. Gal Gadot's definitely phoning it in, unfortunately. And I like Gal Gadot. She's a brilliant actress, but she wasn't giving her best bet here, I don't think, personally. Yeah, so yeah. Would I recommend Disney Snow White? Not really, but it's up to you. The next one, now this might shock some people as well, but this is more so for disappointment and predictability as opposed to being awful, and that is Captain America Brave New World. Now, I have done a review on it, and I was fairly positive in my review of it, and it is a decent Marvel movie. It's not a terrible movie, but so you're probably wondering why is it on the worst part of the list. That's because of the way it was advertised, the first half of the movie, and also how predictable the movie was. They spoilt the big twist, if you want to call it that, right in all the trailers. The fact that General Ross, or President Thaddeus Ross, becomes Red Hulk, because the whole point of the movie is sort of building up to Ross becoming Hulk, and they try to make it a secret, wondering what's going on. But we as an audience already know, because it's plastered all over posters, all over interviews. It was done at Comic-Con panels, the trailers. And so it is done in such a poor way that you're just sat there going, come on, let's get to him transforming now. This is what we want to see. It's like this weird mystery that's going on where there's like someone has been like set up for these mystery crimes. It turns out that obviously it was the leader from the Incredible Hulk. This is pretty much an Incredible Hulk movie 2 with Captain America thrown in. They do the return of Betty Ross from the Incredible Hulk as well, played by the same actress as well, Liv Tyler, who does a good job when she's on screen, but she's not on screen very much. So yeah, I'm just not a huge fan of how predictable it is, and Red Hulk comes and goes. You know when it's going to happen. You know the scene when it's going to happen because it was plastered in the trailers. It's just so predictable. And I wasn't a huge fan of the new design for the leader. When I saw all the concept art for the leader leaked online, which looked brilliant and quite comic book accurate, to then what we actually got in the movie, they went a different route. I wasn't a huge fan, if I'm perfectly honest. And the fact they don't call him the leader in the movie, even though that's who he is, I think is a bit silly. They tiptoe around it. Nothing wrong with Anthony Mackie as Captain America. I thought he did a pretty good job for what it's worth, and I like the new Falcon. But yeah, it was just a bit slow-paced, too predictable, and just, yeah, it doesn't end in the right way. And the fact that apparently Harrison Ford might not be ever returning as Thaddeus Ross or to play Red Hulk, it sort of makes this movie even more irrelevant to a degree. So yeah, it was just disappointing more so than bad. The fourth movie I'm going to talk about on this list is another movie that's sort of taking a childhood character and turning them evil. I've done a review on as well on the channel, and that is Screamboat, where Screamboat takes the character of Steamboat Willie, stroke Mickey Mouse, and turns it into a killing machine. Some of the positives I will say is there is some really interesting and inventive kills. I also like the fact that they made, Screamboat or the Steamboat Willie character actual mouse size. They didn't make him just a big, massive guy in a suit. So I thought that was quite creative and led to some creative situations. But the problem is this does suffer from low budgets. It suffers from being a bit of a knockoff movie. Just one of those just to cash in on, an old IP or something that's now been free from copyright and we're just going to make a movie out of it. And there's lots of references to Disney characters and little nods using some quotes. They get a bit cringy by the end, if I'm perfectly honest. And again, this movie just ends predictably, and it's just very gory as well. But that's because it's done by the same people who do the Terrifier movies. But yeah, it wasn't the best movie. But if you want to hear my full thoughts, I have got a review on it on the channel. And the last movie I'm going to talk about also might surprise some people, but this is, again, due to disappointment as opposed to being a bad movie. And that is another Disney movie, the most recent live-action film, Lilo and Stitch. Now, I'm going to start with the positives of Lilo and Stitch. Firstly, Chris Saunders, again as Stitch, is fantastic. He is brilliant to the letter, to the T, does a great job. And the design of Stitch, fantastic. Couldn't get Stitch wrong even if you tried. They nailed Stitch perfectly. And I even like the character of Lilo. I think Lilo's done really well, and I also think Pleakley has done really well. And the design for the Grand Councilwoman and all is done great. Even Jumba, to a degree, is done really well. The negatives come from what they do to Jumba, the character assassination of him, and also the character assassination of Nani. And everyone talks about it, people have done memes of it now, like Ohana means family, except if you want to leave and go get a university degree, then stuff Ohana. They really did assassinate Nani's character, because obviously in the original Lilo and Stitch, she was trying everything to protect Lilo, keep Lilo, but in this movie, she starts by doing that, but then in the end decides, no, I still want to pursue this career, so I've got to leave Lilo behind. And they shoehorn in a post-credit scene to show that she is coming back to see Lilo, but that doesn't change the fact that she chose to go to university over staying with Lilo. And also what they do to Jumba is horrendous. I'm not being funny. Zach Galifianakis is a fantastic actor, but the moment he spoke, me and my fiancé turned to each other and said, yeah, that doesn't sound like Jumba. And it's not the greatest Jumba, I'm really sorry to say. Every time he spoke, I thought, this isn't Jumba. This isn't Jumba. This isn't what Jumba does. And also, Jumba doesn't stay with Lilo at the end. He sort of becomes... He's just the main antagonist, really. And I'm just wondering where they're going to go from here. Because Jumba and Pleakley's relationship in this is not done the best, because they're supposed to grow as the film goes on, changing their opinions on Lilo and stuff. But that doesn't happen this time round, because they want Jumba to stay the bad guy. So I'm not really huge on that, if I'm perfectly honest. The pacing is alright. Not perfect, but it's okay. The music is still really, really good, and I do like the location footage and the shots and all as well. I think that's okay. But yeah, overall, I was just really disappointed with Lilo and Stitch, if I'm honest. But obviously, as more films come out, this film will probably get knocked out of the worst list. But for now, for me, yeah, it's definitely low on the list. But that is going to be it for my top 10 best and worst movies of 2025 so far. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like it by giving it a thumbs up and comment down below your thoughts and what are your top 5 best and worst movies of this year so far. And subscribe if you are new. But for now, this is the Nearly Girl signing off. I hope you've had an amazing day, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye for now, everyone.